Red Army versus Mujahideen, Soviet-Afghan War Tactics, 1980-85. In 1980, the world's largest army stepped into Afghanistan, certain the war would end fast. What followed was a quiet disaster, shaped by mountains, faith, hidden fighters, and choices that pulled two empires into a struggle neither could control. December 1979 opens with Soviet columns rolling across the Afghan border in the dark. Within days, commandos storm the presidential palace in Kabul, kill the country's communist leader, and place Babrak Karmal in power as Moscow's chosen ruler. Official statements describe the mission as friendly help for a troubled ally. Leaders in the Kremlin expect calm to return once order is restored. Afghanistan refuses to cooperate with that plan. The country is not a neat battlefield with clear front lines. Mountain chains divide valleys into separate worlds. Villages answer first to tribe and faith, not to distant ministries. Stories of past invasions pass from father to son. Much of the countryside already belongs to armed groups who call themselves Mujahideen, men who see the arrival of foreign troops as a call to holy war. Karmal tries to sound reassuring. Speeches promise democracy, free speech, and respect for Islam. Amnesties release former prisoners. A few clerics offer public support. At the same time, a new secret police force takes shape. KHAD, trained with help from the KGB, begins to fill cells with teachers, students, clerics, and former officials. Interrogations start almost at once. Fear spreads faster than reform. Anger soon spills into the streets. Kandahar, Herat, and Kabul are filled with protesters shouting against the new regime. On February 21st, nearly 300,000 people march through the capital. Soldiers block the crowds. Shots follow. Hundreds fall before the day ends. Instead of calming the country, the intervention lights a fire that spreads across every province. What now stands in Afghanistan is not a simple occupation. A modern army with tanks, aircraft, and radios faces fighters who move on foot, hide among families, and answer to local leaders. One side brings orders written in Moscow. The other brings faith, memory, and patience. This is the war that will shape everything that follows. Sickness soon became an enemy no rifle could stop. Camps lacked clean water, proper shelter, and basic medicine. Mosquitoes carried malaria through the barracks. Typhoid and hepatitis spread from one unit to the next. Men weakened before they ever reached the front. Field hospitals filled far beyond their limits. A Soviet nurse later described wards meant for 30 beds that held 300 men. Many lay on bare ground with only their coats beneath them. Heads were shaved. Bodies crawled with lice. Fever and infection moved faster than any convoy. Death followed illness in steady waves. The army tried to keep losses quiet. Bodies were sealed in zinc coffins and flown home at night. Official forms called them Cargo 200. Families received brief notices with few details. No ceremonies followed. No public lists appeared. Those silver coffins became a quiet symbol of a war most citizens barely understood. Survivors carried home something worse than scars. Many returned bitter and distant. Some spoke of fear that never left them. Others spoke of shame or anger toward leaders who had sent them into a war with no clear purpose. The army still fought on, yet something inside it had begun to break. Violence soon moved into darker places. The open battles faded at times, replaced by secret work and silent killings. KHAD agents hunted rebels in cities and villages. The KGB trained informers and planted spies inside insurgent groups. Mujahideen fighters answered with assassinations of party officials and police officers. Civilians caught between both sides paid the highest price. A teacher named Mrs. Nasseri later told of her arrest by former students who now served the secret police. She was taken into a room filled with severed fingers, ears, and hair taken from prisoners before her. A corpse lay in the corner. The smell never left her memory. Fear became a weapon used as carefully as any bomb. Hospitals and aid workers did not escape. Helicopters struck clinics in remote valleys. Mines were scattered through fields and paths, many shaped to attract children. Some tore legs away instead of killing outright. In Kabul, insurgents struck the power grid in the winter of 1982. Explosions dropped the city into darkness and showed that the resistance now reached far beyond simple ambushes. All roads soon led back to one valley. Panjshir sat close to the Salang Pass, the main artery linking north and south. Control of that valley meant control of movement through the heart of the country. Ahmad Shah Massoud had turned it into a fortress built from cliffs, caves, and loyal villages. In the spring of 1982, the largest assault yet rolled into Panjshir. 12,000 Soviet and Afghan troops advanced with tanks, guns, helicopters, and jets. Massoud answered with 4,000 fighters spread across narrow passes and high ridges. Fire poured down from above. Ambushes cut columns apart. Blocking forces forces waited at exits to trap those who tried to flee. 2 weeks of fighting left valleys scorched and villages emptied. Hundreds died on both sides. Yet when the smoke lifted, Massoud had slipped away once more. Outposts remained, but the resistance returned as soon as patrols moved on. Later attacks grew larger and harsher. One Estonian soldier remembered losing control during raids, shouting just to keep moving while shots echoed around him. In Padkwab-e-Shana, troops poured burning chemicals into canals where villagers hid. More than 100 people died in the fire. Terror had become policy. While the valleys burned, the wider war changed shape. In Washington, a new president chose to press harder. Funding for the resistance rose from millions to hundreds of millions. Saudi Arabia matched every dollar. Charlie Wilson in Congress pushed the cause with unusual energy. CIA officer Gus Avrakotos found ways to send weapons without drawing attention. Soon, the Mujahideen carried more than rifles. Mortars, rockets, and recoilless guns arrived from foreign factories. Training improved. Rockets struck Kabul at night. Helicopters flew lower and faster to avoid fire. Caravans moved through hidden trails from Pakistan with growing skill. The human cost rose beyond counting. By 1984, more than 5 million Afghans lived in camps across Pakistan and Iran. Families crossed borders with little more than clothes and memories. Children learned war before school. Leadership changed again in Moscow. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took power with plans to rebuild his country. Afghanistan stood in his way. He wanted reform, yet he had inherited a war that refused to end. Orders went out for one last push. Special forces hunted supply routes along the border. Large offensives tried to crush bases at Khost and Jawar. Paratroopers fought through tunnel networks that held mosques, clinics, repair shops, and generators deep inside the mountains. One airborne soldier later spoke of killing at close range and lying to families about heroic deaths that never happened. The final Panjshir campaign proved the point again. Thousands died, villages vanished. Massoud survived. The map looked the same when it ended. By now, the pattern was clear. The Red Army brought tanks, aircraft, road control, and forced removals. The Mujahideen brought ambush, local guides, foreign money and faith. Battles could be won, valleys could be cleared. None of it lasted. Fighters returned when patrols left. Villagers hid food and shelter where soldiers could not see. Political plans failed due to the fighting. Reforms convinced few. The government ruled cities and little else. Each massacre created new enemies. Each refugee camp became a school for future fighters. No victory waited at the end of this road. By 1985, the Soviets were tired and isolated. The rebels were stronger than before. Within a few years, Soviet troops would leave Afghanistan. Not long after, the empire that sent them would begin to fall apart. The war left marks far beyond one country. Men trained in these valleys carried their skills into later conflicts. Old rivalries shaped new struggles. A local war had bent the course of a global rivalry. This conflict proved a simple truth. Machines cannot defeat people who believe they are fighting for their land and their faith. Strategy matters more than numbers. Sometimes the smallest fighters shape the fate of empires. If you enjoyed this deep look at one of the Cold War's hardest wars, remember to like the video, subscribe for more history, and tell us which conflict you want to explore next. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.